Okay, today we are going to start talking about an introduction to methods in Java. For this, we are going to use a program that we have already done, which is our fitness app that we did during the summative, and we are also going to look at like an algorithm that is on CodeHS. So basically, we're going to start talking about how you're supposed to make your algorithms right now. Okay? Up to today, you guys have used the run method as your main method. You see, the public void run is where all the algorithm is held. If you open this, if you maximize this method, everything inside is your program. Okay? There are two things. One is that we are going to transform our program into more than one method. That way we can have like chunks of code and we can recycle that code and recycle whatever it needs to do in a more generalized way. But we are also going to learn how to use the main method, how we're supposed to create programs and algorithms in a professional way, like how we're supposed to do it in real life, how we would do it in Visual Studio Code or in any other compiler. So that's something that's going to change a little in two aspects. One, we are going to change the public void run for public static void main, because we're going to have those definition and those modifiers changed a little bit. Okay, so it's not going to be public void run anymore. It's going to be public static void main. Okay, so for that we are going to create a new sandbox, and here's where everybody's going to do this along with the video. And we're going to say fitness app. We're going to create a fitness app. Okay, remember to use upper camel case so we can follow the instructions of readability. And we are going to select Java main. Okay, remember we've used Java Carol, Super Carol, Java Console, so we can have the public run. But now we're going to do the real thing. We're going to use Java main. And from now on, your programs, when I ask for different algorithms or different projects, you're going to develop them in Java main. And you can use this as a template also, so you can work on your programs. Now, if you see this, it's a little bit different. Now you don't have the public run here. Okay? The definition of the main method in Java is public static void main. Okay? We're talking about static because we are going to create static methods that are going to be share information across the whole class. So we have the class called my program, and we have the public static void main. Imagine that this is your public run method, okay? And we're going to create some other more methods on the way. Now to do this, there's a major change, and is the way that users input information. We used to have input information. If you go to your fitness app, when you input information, you only have to say create or declare the variable, the type of the variable, in this case is string, and say read line and whatever is going to be prompt or the prompt for the user. Okay? That's going to change a little bit because we are going to have to create an object and use that object to read a line. So that is kind of like the major change and what I want you to understand and get from this video. So for that, we are going to need, first of all, to import a class. Okay, in that case, I'm going to import java.util dot asterisk, and this means that everything inside this utilities library or class is going to be imported, and I can use all of them. Inside this util class, there's one called scanner, and that's the one that we're going to use. Okay, so that's a major change. how do we create a scanner or an object called scanner? So we can ask for user input. Now, between the public class and the public static void main, we're going to create a global variable. Global variables are variables that can be used anywhere in your algorithm across different methods. They have the possibility to be overwritten in any single method. So you have to be careful, because once you create a global variable, any method can modify that variable if it has the same name. So we're going to create a private scanner, and of course it has to be static so we can use it in our program. Private static scanner reader equals new scanner system.in. Now, this line of code, as you can see it here, is going to be needed for every single user input. You just have to do it once, but this reader variable, this object, is the one that you're going to use in order to retrieve information from the keyboard anywhere in your program. So you have a global variable that is called reader, and this reader is going to be the one that accepts information from the keyboard. This has to be very, very clear. Now, my advice, learn this line of code by heart. Later on, you will understand that the structure is the same for creating every single object in Java, but for now, memorize this line of code. Private static scanner reader equals new scanner. The word private and public are the modifiers. Okay, these modifiers say, look, reader is going to be available across this class, across the whole algorithm that I'm creating. Now, public means that if you have multiple classes in your project, you will be able to access those methods from another class. That pretty much says the accessibility, or the way that other classes can access methods and variables from other classes. Okay, so now that we have our reader, we have the scanner, we can actually ask for information. The first thing we do is that instead of saying, look, string name, read line, all this in one line, we need to ask first, or prompt the user, and for that we need a system.out.println, okay, and say, please enter your name. Okay, the error is due because now this method, which is readLine, when we're using the void, it changes. So this is very important. Now it's not readLine, it's reader.nextLine. So we have to take this into account when we create our program, because the method is not readLine anymore, it's nextLine, and you need the object. Okay, so we're going to run it again and see if we can retrieve that information from the code. Okay, this is these are kind of like the changes that we're going to have in mind when we create our algorithm, mostly because our create performance test will require this. So it says, please enter your name. We're going to enter our name, which is Peter, and we will get the word Peter. So this means that you are getting the information, the variable type, and you're also printing the name correctly. So this is like the first major change that you need to take into account for your new programs from now on. You will not be allowed to create any program using the console. Now you will use the Java main. Okay, so this is very, very important. Now, let's begin talking just a little bit about methods. And method kind of follows the philosophy of divide and conquer. Every time that you have a program or a problem that has many tasks, you want to split those tasks into small pieces or chunks, and it will allow you to recycle that code in case that it's needed in other situations or in other places of the algorithm. As a programmer, I advise that the process of abstraction is the way of planning how am I going to do different things. Now, imagine those methods as boxes where code is developed. Remember when you guys were working with Carol, Carol used methods in order to repeat different like tasks. Or let's say Carol needed to move twice forward and then turn left. And if that was repeated, you wanted to create a method, and that method will contain move, move, turn left, and then you can use it and recycle it anywhere in the program. Well, this is very similar. Now, there are going to be a certain amount of parameters, and we're going to call them parameters because they're the ones inside the parentheses, and we're going to talk about return values. Sometimes these methods will return something after they finish, and sometimes they will just execute a certain amount of procedures and then finish. Okay? And we're going to talk about the two different types of methods. When you look at your program in CodeHS, you can see that Java methods is like the introduction to Java, to methods. And it's kind of like what is a method and why do we use methods, etc. And there's an example with print line break and kind of like a repetition of this. Then we get into methods and parameters, and then finally methods and return values, like what happens when you have a method that you want to return something at the end, like the result after it's executed. Now, if you look at this program, there is input like part of the program where you ask information that you need from the user. If you look at the fitness app, we're asking for the name. Then when we're asking for the name, it asks for the number of steps, and then the number of steps will says, well, what is the number of minutes of work? Like all this information is kind of like a chunk of code. Like it asks for the name first, like to input the variables. Then it says, okay, give me all the information that I need, like minutes that you worked and the amount of steps. Okay, and all this can be put into a single method. Now, imagine that all this is going to be in a little box that it's going to be called, and here I'm going to call it public static. It has to be static. And I'm going to say void because for now, we are going to look at a method that doesn't return anything. It just executes, kind of like with Carol. So we're going to call it public static void, and we're going to call it ask info. Now we can call it whatever we want. It should be related to kind of like what we're asking for. And in ask info, which is a method different from the one that it's a public static void main, remember, they have to be like differentiated. And you can do this by clicking on the down arrow, and you can see which methods have something or not. Like this method has something inside, so I can see it. Okay, and public static void ask info will kind of like give me all that information that I need. So I am going to pass this information from the public static void main to ask info. Here, basically, I am asking for the name, then retrieving the name, then printing the name. Okay? So now this information that I ask on the void main is here. Now look at the following exercise. I am going to click on run. Okay? And you're going to look at what happens at the code. Okay, right now we see that nothing shows on the console. Now let's look and let's analyze why. The program, when Java executes, when I click on run, Java looks for this. The first thing is it looks for the method called public static void main, like the main method, and jumps into the main method. So Java comes and finds the method and says, okay, I am going to run everything that it's inside this method. That's the first thing. It searches for the main. After it finds the main, runs the first line inside the main method. And there's nothing. So it doesn't print anything. Like, it doesn't do anything. What we need to do is tell it, okay, if you get to the main method, then please run the method called askInfo. So the computer will, or the algorithm will go to the main method, run the first line of code, and jump into the method called askInfo. Okay? And then automatically will run everything that's inside the askInfo method. So here now we can see that it entered, please enter your name, and it runs perfectly. So we are going to do is call, like what we want on the main method is calls, like calls to the methods. We don't want anything else unless this is strictly necessary. But on the main method, we just want calls to different methods. This is going to be very important because on the CreatePT, you're going to be asked for methods with a specific requirements. Like this method must contain a parameter, and this method should return something, or it must have a list, or it should traverse a list, etc., etc. Okay, so this is all for now. We are going to continue working on this program in our next module or our next tutorial, and you guys can continue working with the fitness app. Again, everything will be done in public static void main from now on. You can do it either on the sandbox or you can do it on Visual Studio Code. It doesn't matter.